Evergreen State Community College is in the hot seat after a disturbance on campus. Last week, a group of students cornered biology professor Brett Weinstein. Some students called him racist, and they've asked him to resign. Now, the confrontation stems from an annual tradition at the school where some minority students choose not to attend class to send a message about racial inequalities. This year, some students were calling upon white students not to attend school, and Weinstein refused, saying this was an inappropriate request. Representative Matt Manweller plans now to introduce a bill to pull $24 million of state funding from Evergreen. He says the school doesn't deserve public funding because of this and previous student disruptions.
This is like a parent looking at a spoiled brat having a temper tantrum and appeasing that child. I mean, these students need to be educated on what it means to live in a tolerant society where you're open to ideas.
Now, Professor Weinstein says that he disagrees with Manweller's proposal to defund the school, but he is calling for the president of the college to resign because of how they have handled this situation. In the meantime, he has been teaching his biology class off campus because he says he's concerned about safety.
Don't tell that to the media, though. Like progressives everywhere, they see racists under every bed, even, believe it or not, at Evergreen State College in the state of Washington. Evergreen is one of the most left-wing schools in the Western Hemisphere, but its students have become convinced the place has been infiltrated by bigots. To root them out, progressives there have occupied administration buildings, ordered white people off the campus with the threat of force. Watch this.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist teachers have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Whiteness is the most violent system to ever breathe.
Black power! Black power! Black power!
It's not an accident that all of our administration is white.
Right.
It's not an accident. That is systematic as
I'm tired of white people talking about what black and brown people need. You don't know.
you and the police.
Well, our leaders in Washington fret about Vladimir Putin and his bloggers. This is what's going on in the rest of America. Where are the people in charge exactly? Well, they're abasing themselves before their tormentors, of course. George Bridges, the cringing president of Evergreen, actually thanked the rioters as they screamed at him. He expressed his, quote, gratitude for their, quote, passion and courage in trampling the rights of everyone else. How did we get here exactly? Well, there are a lot of answers to that question, but a main one is this. The left's concerns for equal rights for all has been replaced by the diversity agenda, which is a destructive obsession with race. It trumps free speech, which is routinely suppressed in its name. It obviates the rule of law, which aggrieved parties can freely ignore, as you just saw. In the name of tolerance, it demands conformity. Its calls for justice are often an excuse for violence. It is totalitarian, and suddenly it is everywhere. What does this mean for the rest of us? Britt Hume is Fox's senior political analyst. He joins us, as he always does, for Perspective. Britt, it seems like this is accelerating.
It does to me. It seems that way to me, too, Tucker. And I think it's fair to say that free speech is kind of the old gray mare of campus life now. It ain't what it used to be. And in places such as the University of Southern California, University of California at Berkeley, which was the birthplace, you may recall, of Mario Savio back in the 60s, yes, and the free speech movement, we now have efforts to suppress speech. We have protesters who heckle, either the threat of heckling or rioting leads to cancellations of scheduled speeches by the likes of Ann Coulter. You don't have to agree with Ann Coulter to believe that in this country she ought to be able to go and speak wherever she likes, and people should be free to attend, and she ought to be able to get her words out without being heckled into silence. But this, in this day and age, is what principally the left has come to. It's triumphed in a number of areas, civil rights being a conspicuous example, Tucker. But now that the great victories in these movements, civil rights, equal rights, have been basically won, they're looking for new fields to conquer, new grievances to work on, and now we have them wanting to suppress speech in the name of diversity, in the name of tolerance, and so on. It's
But
remarkable.
The people in charge of the left, its institutions, have a lot to lose here. I mean, a society where people aren't allowed to say what they think, where people are punished unequally based on their skin color, where the mob gets to determine policy. I mean, that is a real threat to the people in charge, and they're not speaking up to defend themselves.
Well, the college administrators, I think, in this respect, are among the worst offenders. They're confronted with a choice when a controversial speaker is about to appear on campus, and there are threats of heckling at the least and perhaps rioting at the most, they have two choices. One is, the thing they want to do is they want to avoid a disturbing incidents. They want to avoid a riot. They want to avoid an incident when someone is shouted down.
Right.
The hard way to do that is to police the event sufficiently that you suppress that kind of behavior, the rioting and the heckling. The easy way to do it is to cancel the event. They are repeatedly now choosing the easy way.
What's so striking is how little coverage any of this gets. I mean, you got to think that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if a college campus, Evergreen is a place I've heard of, I mean, it's a real college apparently, were demanded that people of a certain skin color leave and then threatened any ones who stayed and then occupied all the buildings on campus, shut the place down. At least it would merit like a note on the front page of the New York Times. It's not there.
No, it is not, and it is a story that the newspapers with their leftist sympathies don't find as interesting as stories about, white supremacists kills 2 in hate crime on train or wherever. It's just the way it works. And this is, part of what we experience daily in our biased media.
But I wonder if this, the consequence is this, it's radicalizing an entire generation of students, not just on the left, but also on the right. I mean, there are kids who are taking their cues from this and believing it all, internalizing it, but there are others who are saying, I reject everything you say, and it's making them radical too, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, it's particularly disturbing that this is centered so much as it is on campuses, which are supposed to be the very places where controversial speech, even hate speech, can be heard and can be spoken. And that the idea has always been the answer to speech you don't like is speech you do like.
Right.
Combat ideas with ideas, combat bad ideas with better ones, and so on. Campuses are supposed to be the place that nourish that atmosphere, and at the moment, in too many places, that's not happening.
So let me just ask you finally a historical question. I'm not saying you were alive in the 50s, but just for the sake of argument, let's say you. Okay, you'll admit it. So the 50s are presented historically as a period of total conformity in American life, where everyone had to act the same way, under threat of punishment. Was the conformity then as stifling as it is now?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, the point about the conformity then was, and I remember it well when I was coming through school, and there was a certain way kids tried to dress and tried to act and the things they liked. But I remember at that time when Bill Haley and the Comets came out with a song called "Rock Around the Clock" in the 50s. And it swept away with the music that it ushered in behind it. It swept away the big band sound and the crooning sound that had been so much. And there were people who thought that rock and roll and Elvis Presley were revolutionary and violation of all kinds of morals and all that. And of course, things didn't turn out that way. But there was cultural change and upheaval in those days too. It just, we look back on it now, it all seems rather tame. That's because the responses to it were largely civilized. What we're looking at now is cultural change, and a lot of it is not civilized.
I think that's exactly the distinction. Britt Hume, thank you for that.
A local college gaining national attention after a school threat shut down campus today and tomorrow. I'm Marnie Hughes.
And I'm David Rose. This shutdown comes about a week after the same school was at the center of a controversy involving race issues. Jamie Tompkins explains if the two events are connected and what's next in the investigation.
It's very quiet out here on campus tonight. This large sign blocks the main entrance, preventing vehicles from entering the campus. And we still don't have any word yet tonight on when the campus will fully reopen.
One of my professors says, okay, everyone, I just received a text from the campus saying we have to evacuate immediately.
Confused students poured out of classes after school officials learned about a 911 call from a person claiming to be armed and on their way to the Olympia campus.
Late this morning, Thurston County officials received a call that was threatening in nature to the campus.
This email sent to students explained the possible threat of an active shooter coming to campus. State Patrol and Olympia PD patrolled the campus and the surrounding area as students, staff, and faculty left campus, and parents picked up their kids from the college daycare center.
We're going to work with our law enforcement partners to understand the nature of the threat.
The disruption comes on the heels of racial tension at the school, following an annual event where minority students usually leave campus campus for a day to address racial issues. This year, some groups called on white people to stay off campus. Biology teacher Brett Weinstein spoke up, calling it oppressive.
Nobody should tell some other group to leave campus and then stigmatize them if they decide not to go.
Just last week, a group of students crashed Weinstein's class, calling him a racist.
There's nothing racist about what I said.
The college says they do not know if last week's unrest is related to this morning's threat, but some students say the mood on campus is tense, and this latest commotion isn't helping matters.
Only care about one thing is that how can I make Evergreen better? That's all that matters to me.
While the campus remains closed, they are on suspended operations, which means no classes tonight or tomorrow. But staff is here on campus to provide services and security for students who live here. In Olympia, I'm Jamie Tompkins, Q13 News.